His Christmas bride arrived with nothing, until her secret gift saved the ranch and his heart. The train hissed out a last gust of steam as it shuddered to a stop in Timber Ridge, Montana. Snow swirled across the platform, carried by a wind sharp enough to sting the skin. Mary Whitaker stepped down carefully, clutching her small carpet bag and the Bible she'd held through every mile of her journey west. The depot was little more than a weathered building with frosted windows, but to Mary, it looked like a beginning, perhaps even an answer to prayer. She scanned the platform, her breath billowing into the cold air. She spotted the man almost instantly. Tall, broad-shouldered, and standing a little apart from the other passengers, he watched her with a guarded expression. His hat brim shaded eyes the color of a winter storm. She recognized him from the letter written in his neat, straightforward hand. Levi Carter. Her heart thudded nervously beneath her worn coat. She approached him with a hopeful smile. "Mr. Carter?" He nodded stiffly, but there was no warmth in it. "You're Mary Whitaker?" "Yes," she said. "Your mail order." Her voice faltered under the weight of his unreadable stare. "Your bride." For a long moment he didn't answer. Snow gathered in the groove of his hat and on the shoulders of his coat. Mary's breath hitched as she waited. "I'm sorry," he said finally, the words clipped and heavy. "There's been a mistake." It felt as though someone had knocked the breath from her lungs. She steadied herself, fingers tightening around her Bible. I followed the directions from your letter. I came as soon as I could. I thought." Her voice faded. Levi looked away, jaw working as if chewing down frustration or guilt. "When I wrote that letter, I just lost my ma. The ranch was falling apart. I thought I needed someone, anyone, to help hold it together." He let out a bitter breath. "I shouldn't have sent it. A man grieving shouldn't make decisions that bind another person's life." Mary swallowed the ache rising in her chest. She had nothing, not family, not home, not prospects. Only faith. The letter from Levi had been a doorway she prayed God had opened. She lifted her chin with quiet courage. "I understand your grief, Mr. Carter. But I am here and I have nowhere else to go." He winced at that. "I'm not heartless. I'll not leave you in town to fend for yourself." He nodded toward his waiting wagon. "I'll take you to the ranch for now. You can stay until the preacher comes through. He'll help us set things right." Something inside Mary wilted, but she managed a faint nod. She followed him to the wagon, the cold biting into her bones. They rode in silence through the widening dusk. The mountains rose dark and jagged in the distance, and drifts of snow glimmered under the fading light. Mary held her Bible close, drawing strength from its familiar weight. "The land is beautiful," she offered quietly. "Unlike anything I've known." "Beauty can be harsh," Levi replied. He kept his eyes forward, reins firm in his gloved hands. "Montana teaches that quick." She studied him for a moment, the tense set of his shoulders, the hard lines of a man who had carried too much alone. "I'm truly sorry about your mother." He gave a small nod. "Thank you." But the words seemed pulled from him with effort. Minutes passed, filled only with the crunch of the horse's hooves on frozen ground. "I don't wish to be a burden," Mary said softly. "You're not a burden," he answered, though his voice was tight. "Just unexpected. Life doesn't have room for surprises right now." Mary turned her gaze toward the mountains, whispering a prayer only God could hear. By the time they reached the Carter Ranch, night had blanketed the valley. The house was simple but sturdy, lamplight glowing in one window. The faint scent of wood smoke lingered in the air. Inside, the warmth of the hearth chased away the worst of the cold. Levi showed her a small side room with a narrow cot and a neatly folded quilt. "You can stay here until the preacher arrives," he said. "After that, we'll decide what comes next." Mary nodded. "Thank you." He hesitated, as if wanting to say more but unwilling or unable, then offered a slight tug of his hat brim before stepping back into the cold night. Left alone, Mary set her carpet bag on the cot and sank to her knees. She placed the Bible gently beside her and bowed her head. "Lord," she whispered, voice trembling, "I don't know why I was brought here. I feel very small and very alone. But I trust you. Please, make a way." The wind moaned outside, rattling the shutters, but the flame of the small oil lamp flickered faithfully beside her. And Mary held on to that light, believing, however faintly, that God was not finished with her story. Not yet. Mary woke before sunrise, though she'd barely slept. The little cot in the spare room had been clean and neatly made, but unfamiliar roofs have a way of magnifying loneliness. She had lain awake listening to the wind sigh around the corners of the cabin and the steady creak of something loose on the roof. Levi's heavy tread had passed by her door once or twice, but he hadn't lingered. By morning the fire in the hearth had grown cold. The house felt as chilly as the prairie outside. Mary slipped from bed, pulled on her boots and wrapped her thin shawl around her shoulders. The floorboards were icy underfoot. She breathed out a mist of air and smiled faintly. Montana did not do anything halfway. She lit the small lantern in her room and quietly stepped out into the main room. Levi was already awake, shrugging into his coat near the door. His hair was damp, as if he'd splashed water on his face to wake himself. He paused when he noticed her. "You're up early," he said gruffly. "I'm accustomed to early mornings," Mary replied. "There's much to do in a household and she hesitated, catching herself. She was not mistress of this home. She was hardly even wanted in it. Levi must have sensed her change in tone. "You don't need to do anything here," he said. "I'll handle the chores." Mary smiled politely. "I don't mind helping." Levi's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in that same conflicting way she'd noticed yesterday, as though he wasn't accustomed to someone trying to lighten his burdens. "I mean it," he said. "You're a guest, nothing more." The words pierced gently but deeply. She lowered her eyes. "Of course." He softened slightly. "The stove's tricky. I'll start coffee before I head out. Jonah will be by soon to help with the stock." Mary nodded, clasping her hands to keep them from trembling. Levi hesitated a moment longer, then stepped out into the frigid morning. Silence filled the house as Mary stood there, staring after him. The quiet work of willing hands. When she was certain he was gone, Mary took a steadying breath and moved into the small kitchen area. It was modest. Simple shelves of tin plates and mugs, a cast-iron stove, and a wooden counter scarred with years of use. She found a broom tucked behind the door. Dust gathered in the corners from the long winter. Without thinking, she swept it away until the floorboards shone. She straightened the chairs, wiped the counters, and set the kettle over the fire Levi had coaxed to life. Once the kitchen was warm and orderly, she pulled on her shawl and stepped outside. The ranch greeted her with a stinging cold that took her breath. But beyond the sting lay breathtaking beauty. Golden light crept slowly over the snow-covered hills, turning them to shimmering white dunes. Cattle huddled together near the fence line. A rooster crowed somewhere in the barnyard. Mary's heart lifted. Even harsh places held God's splendor. She headed toward the chicken coop. The hens clucked indignantly when she opened the door, but she spoke to them gently and gathered 6 eggs into her apron. By the time Jonah arrived from the barn, Mary had set a pot of porridge simmering on the stove and was washing the last of the dishes by the basin. Jonah, a tall man with sandy hair and a kind grin, paused in the doorway. "Begging your pardon, Miss Whitaker, but I thought Mr. Carter said you wasn't to do chores." Mary dried her hands on her skirt, cheeks pink. "I know. But an idle pair of hands feels wrong when there's good work to be done." Jonah's grin widened. "Well, I reckon nobody's going to complain about breakfast smelling like that." She blushed and laughed softly. "Thank you." Attention slowly thawing. Levi returned not long after, snow dusting his coat, boots crunching loudly as he stomped them clean at the door. He smelled of cold wind and horses. Jonah stepped out to the barn, giving Mary a friendly nod as he went. Levi removed his gloves, his face unreadable. "Jonah said you cooked." "I hope you don't mind," Mary said. She kept her voice gentle, unassuming. It seemed a shame to let the stove go cold. He looked around the kitchen, the swept floor, the clean counters, the organized shelves. Something like discomfort, or perhaps embarrassment, flickered across his face. "You didn't have to do all this." "I know," Mary replied, meeting his eyes steadily. "But I'm here. And if I'm here, I will do what good I can." Levi exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're determined." She smiled shyly. "Faith teaches perseverance." His gaze softened for just a moment, one heartbeat where he seemed to see her, not as an intrusion, but as a woman trying to bring light into a dark place. But then he turned toward the table. They ate in quiet, though the quiet was less sharp than the night before. Levi bowed his head briefly in prayer, a small gesture, but it warmed Mary more than the stove. When he lifted his head, she caught him watching her hands, the humble way she held the spoon, the slight weariness around her eyes. "You traveled a long way," he said. "Yes." "You left everything behind?" "Yes." She hesitated. When a woman has no one left and no place to stay, she either stays where the sorrow is, or she walks toward hope, even if hope is a stranger's letter. Levi inhaled sharply, as though the truth of her words touched something in him he didn't want touched. "You shouldn't have had to do that alone," he murmured. But I wasn't alone, she said softly. The Lord walked with me. He said nothing, but his expression changed, less hard, more contemplative. After breakfast, Levi stood and took his coat from its peg. I'll finish the chores, he said. If you need anything. Jonah's around. Mary nodded. Thank you. He paused at the door, glancing back once, as though debating whether to say more, but then stepped out into the cold. Mary watched him through the window for a moment, the way he moved with quiet strength across the snow, shoulders burdened by more than the weight of morning chores. She pressed her hand to the glass, warmed by the inside heat yet chilled by the outside world. Lord, she whispered, help me be patient. Help me show kindness he doesn't expect. And give him rest, even if only for a moment. The day had begun in cold silence. But Mary felt, perhaps for the first time, that something was shifting. Not in Levi. Not yet. But in the house. In the air. In the quiet places between two lonely hearts. That evening, after supper and the quiet shuffle of Levi retiring to his room, Mary lingered near the dying embers of the hearth. The house felt cavernous in its stillness, echoing with the footsteps of someone who had lived too long with grief and far too little companionship. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders and slipped into the small spare room Levi had given her. Only once the door was closed did she reach into her carpet bag. Beneath her neatly folded clothes, nestled carefully in linen, lay the single possession she hadn't revealed. A letter. The parchment was soft with age, the handwriting elegant and familiar, her Aunt Prudence's final message before she'd passed on the previous spring. Mary held it with both hands, reverently, as though the letter itself carried the touch of the woman who had raised her. She had read the words only once before boarding the train west. She had not yet gathered the courage to read them again. Mary sat on the edge of the cot, the lantern's glow flickering over the paper. Her breath trembled. Aunt Prudence, she whispered. I miss you. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, letting peace seep slowly into her heart. Then she broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The letter. My dearest Mary, I know your heart is weary. I know you feel as though the world has forgotten you. But the Lord never forgets his children, and he never sends them on a path without purpose. When you receive this letter, you will also receive notice of what I leave you. Land in your name, savings entrusted to your care, and the full blessing of a woman who loved you as her own child. But my final wish is this. Don't cling to this inheritance for security. Give it when God tells you to give. Plant it where he sends you. It is meant to be a gift for someone in greater need than yourself. You will know when the time comes. Walk in faith, my girl. The Lord is already ahead of you. Aunt Prudence. Mary pressed the letter to her chest, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She whispered a prayer of gratitude, for love past, for provision future, for courage to obey even when the path ahead was clouded with uncertainty. She did not yet know whose need was greater than her own. But she felt, deep in her bones, that God had not brought her to Montana by accident. The ranch's hidden struggle. The next morning Mary rose early again. She baked cornbread, stoked the fire, and carried warm biscuits out to the barn for Levi and Jonah. Jonah accepted them with his broad, easy grin. Levi took his without comment. But Mary saw his eyes soften even as he tried to hide it. She lingered near the barn door watching the men work. Cattle lowed anxiously in the frost, and the early winter sun painted long shadows across the snow. Levi was trying to untangle a length of rope from a corral post. The rope was stiff, knotted from too many hurried uses. Mary could tell immediately what he was doing wrong, but she waited. She didn't want to overstep. Jonah finally huffed. Boss, you're going to break your hands before you break that knot. Levi muttered something under his breath. Mary approached quietly. May I? Levi straightened, surprise flickering in his eyes. He handed her the rope, perhaps more eager for help than he wanted to admit. Mary worked carefully the way her aunt had taught her. In a few moments the knot loosened and the rope slid free. Jonah whistled. Now that's a handy trick. Levi blinked as though seeing her in a new light. Where'd you learn that? Aunt Prudence taught me a great many things. She believed a woman should know how to take care of what the Lord placed in her hands. Levi looked away, a shadow crossing his expression. Must have been nice to have someone like that. Mary sensed the ache under his words but didn't press him. A storm of words. Later that afternoon, Mary overheard voices drifting from the barn. Levi's sharp and tense, Jonah's steady but concerned. She paused before the open barn door, unseen. We're running low on feed, Jonah said. If the storm hits next week like they're predicting, we'll lose even more cattle. We'll make do, Levi replied, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. And the loan? Jonah asked quietly. Levi cursed under his breath. Banker said no. Even with the collateral. After Ma passed, they stopped trusting I could manage things alone. Jonah sighed. Boss, you can't keep this ranch afloat by yourself. The silence that followed was thick with pride and fear. Mary stepped back, giving them privacy, her heart pounding. Her aunt's letter flashed through her mind. The inheritance, the instruction to give where there was need. But surely she couldn't be meant to give it here. To a man who didn't want her. To a ranch that wasn't hers. Yet as she stood in the snow, breath clouding the air, the words settled on her spirit like a gentle whisper. You will know when the time comes. A conversation by firelight. That evening, Levi returned to the house long after dark. He smelled of cold earth and wood smoke. Mary had left a pot of stew on the stove, and though he tried to hide it, he inhaled deeply when he stepped inside. You didn't have to wait, he said. But I wanted to, Mary replied gently. You work so hard. The least I can do is offer a warm meal. He sat, exhaustion etched in every line of his posture. Mary poured him a bowl and watched him take the first spoonful. He paused, eyes closing briefly. This is good, he said quietly. Mary smiled. Thank you. He ate without speaking further, but something softer lived in the silence between them, not comfort but not rejection either. A fragile truce. When he finished, Levi stood. Mary, his voice broke slightly, surprising them both. I know I haven't been kind, but I do see the help you're trying to give. She held his gaze. God asks us to serve even when we aren't seen. Even when the service isn't appreciated yet. Levi swallowed hard. You deserved better than a man who wrote a letter he regrets. Mary's heart squeezed. I don't believe God makes mistakes, Mr. Carter. Not in journeys. Not in people. He drew in a breath, uncertain and conflicted. You have more faith than I do. Then I have enough for both of us, she said softly. Levi turned away suddenly as though afraid she'd see too much. Good night, Mary. Good night, she whispered. When he had gone, Mary returned to her room. She placed Aunt Prudence's letter beneath her pillow. And she prayed, for the ranch, for Levi, for herself. Not knowing that within days, her secret gift would become the one thing capable of saving everything Levi Carter was holding onto by a thread. Winter settled fully over Timber Ridge by the time Mary walked into town. The sky hung low and heavy, thick with the promise of snow, and the dirt road leading from the Carter ranch had become a frozen ribbon beneath her boots. She had wrapped herself in her shawl and Levi's spare coat he had left hanging by the door. She doubted he would notice it missing, and even if he did, she hoped he would forgive her for the practical borrowing. The trip into town had been necessary. Bread, salt, a little flour. Though she hated to use Levi's few coins, they were truly running out of supplies. And if she didn't take care, there would be nothing but thin porridge between them and hunger when the storm finally struck. Mary clutched her basket closer. The cold cut through her layers. Montana seemed to house winter in its very bones. Yet even so, gratitude filled her. A week ago she'd stepped off a train with nowhere to go. Now she had work to do, a roof overhead, and a man who, though gruff and hurting, had more goodness in him than he realized. She prayed quietly as she walked. Lord, show me how to help without being in the way. How to care without being unwanted. A bell chimed as she pushed open the post office door. The lawyer's arrival. Warm air enveloped her, thick with the scent of ink and oiled wood. The clerk, Mr. Halpern, looked up and smiled in surprise. Miss Whitaker. Didn't expect you back so soon. Mary returned the smile. I was hoping for any letters. Perhaps something from back east. Before Mr. Halpern could reply, the door behind Mary opened, letting in a gust of frigid air, and a sharply dressed man with polished boots and a briefcase tucked beneath one arm. Excuse me, he said, removing his hat with a courteous nod. I'm searching for a Miss Mary Whitaker. Mary blinked. I'm Mary Whitaker. The man's expression softened with relief. I'm Mr. Thorne, ma'am. I've traveled from St. Louis on behalf of a Miss Prudence Gardner. Mary felt her breath stall. My aunt? Yes, he said kindly. I'm sorry for your loss. Emotion rose in Mary's throat, sudden and sharp, though it had been months since Aunt Prudence passed. Thank you. Mr. Thorne opened his briefcase and withdrew an envelope sealed with wax. Your aunt left an inheritance and I'm here to finalize matters. Along with the letter you already received, she left you legal control of a small sum and a tract of land near Missouri. The deed has been transferred to your name. Mary stared at him, words vanishing, breath stilled. I don't understand. Mr. Thorne offered a gentle smile. Your aunt wanted to ensure your future. She hoped you'd use her gift wisely. He handed her the documents. Mary cradled them delicately as if holding a fragile bird. Mr. Thorne bowed politely and departed, leaving Mary standing motionless in the warm post office with her heart thundering. The second letter. Mary stepped outside into the cold, where the wind seemed suddenly gentler, as though it too sensed the sacred weight she carried. She walked to a quiet corner near the church where the snow lay untouched. Kneeling on a wooden bench, she unfolded the newly delivered letter. Her aunt's handwriting, steady, looping, beloved, filled the page. My sweet girl, if you are reading this, the time has come for you to receive what I could not give you in life. Use it not to protect yourself but to bless where God leads. I cannot tell you where that will be, only that I trust you. You have always been generous beyond your means. God will honor that. Give freely and do not fear the emptiness afterward. He always fills what we pour out. Walk with courage, Mary. Love boldly. And remember this truth. Sometimes God sends his children far from home so they can become someone else's blessing. With all my love, Aunt Prudence. Mary pressed the letter to her chest, trembling. Lord, her voice cracked. What are you asking of me? The inheritance was enough to buy land outright, enough to secure a comfortable life in any town she chose. Enough to begin again. But her aunt's words rang through her heart like a bell. Give where God sends you. You will know when the time comes. A chill, not from the cold, slid through her. What if God had brought her to Timber Ridge for this very reason? To a ranch on the brink of collapse. To a man trying to bear the weight of the world alone. To a home that needed more than chores and kindness. One that needed mercy. Provision. Grace. She shook her head, frightened by the enormity of it. This can't be what you mean, she whispered. But deep inside, beneath doubt and fear, a quiet certainty took root. Maybe it was Mary's choice. The walk back to the ranch took longer than it should have. Her legs felt weak beneath her, her thoughts spiraling. When the house finally came into view, lantern light glowed softly through the window. Levi was silhouetted inside, tall, weary, rubbing the back of his neck as he studied a ledger at the table. He looked like a man carrying burdens far too heavy for one set of shoulders. Mary's chest tightened. He didn't notice her as she entered. His mind was miles away. Levi, she said softly. He looked up sharply. Relief flickered across his face before he masked it. You were gone longer than I expected. Everything all right? Mary nodded slowly. I received some news in town. Levi watched her carefully, picking up the undercurrent in her voice. What kind of news? She set her basket aside and took a breath. My aunt left me an inheritance. Levi froze. Mary continued, her voice trembling but clear. Money, lad. Enough to start a life anywhere I choose. The words hung heavy between them. Levi swallowed hard. Mary, that's a blessing. You should take it. Go where you'll be safe. Where you'll be wanted. His earnest tone nearly broke her. But Mary stepped closer, courage gathering like fire in her bones. I want to use it here, she whispered. Levi went rigid. No, Mary, I can't accept. This isn't me giving, she said gently, laying a hand over her heart. This is God giving. Through me. And my aunt believed I would know where the need was greatest. Levi shook his head, emotion tightening his face. After the way I've treated you? I tried to send you away. You were grieving, Mary said softly. You still are. His eyes shuddered, raw emotion flickering beneath. But Levi, she continued, voice trembling with conviction, your ranch is drowning. I heard you and Jonah talking. The winter will hit hard. If God has placed me here with enough to save this place, how can I ignore that? He looked at her, really looked, as if seeing her heart laid bare in her eyes. Mary, he whispered, voice rough, I don't deserve this. No one deserves grace, she replied, her own eyes bright. But we all need it. For the first time since she arrived, Levi Carter stepped back, not in rejection but in awe, as if unsure how to stand in the presence of someone offering him a miracle. Evening prayer. That night, after Levi had finally nodded his acceptance, shaken, humbled, and deeply moved, Mary retreated to her room, closed the door, and fell to her knees. Lord, she whispered, tears falling freely, I'm scared. This gift is everything I have. But if this is where you want me, I will stay. I will give. I will trust. She clutched her aunt's letter in one hand, her Bible in the other. Faith wasn't the absence of fear. Faith was the courage to walk forward despite it. Anne Mary Whitaker walked into that night knowing her life had irrevocably intertwined with Levi Carter's, by God's hand, not chance. What she did not yet know was how deeply this ranch, and this man, would soon need her. Not just for land, not just for money, but for hope, for redemption, for love. The storm came without warning. One moment the sky was merely gray, thick with distant clouds but not threatening. The next, wind barreled through the valley like a living thing, howling against the barns and lifting snow into furious spirals. By afternoon, the sun had vanished completely behind a wall of white. Mary watched from the kitchen window, her breath fogging the glass as she pressed one hand against it. "It's coming fast," Jonah said, stepping inside and stomping snow from his boots. "Faster than any storm I've seen this early in winter." "Where's Levi?" Mary asked, heart tightening. "Out checking the south fence line," Jonah replied. "He said he'd be back before the worst of it." But the worst of it was already here. The wind shrieked around the house, slamming loose shutters, hurling icy pellets against the windows. Snow whipped sideways across the ranch yard, nearly obscuring the barns. Mary's stomach twisted with dread. "Jonah," she whispered, "he needs to come back now." Jonah's jaw tightened. "I'll ride out a ways and look for him." But when he opened the door, the blizzard nearly ripped it from its hinges. Snow blasted into the house, freezing the air. "Jonah." Mary grabbed his arm, her voice trembling. "If you go out now, we might lose both of you." Jonah hesitated. The wind screamed louder, drowning out every other sound. "She's right," called a neighbor man who had taken shelter in the barn. "Nobody could ride through that." For the first time since arriving in Montana, Mary felt something she thought she had used up long ago. Panic. Real, gripping, breath-stealing panic. Levi was out there, alone, in a storm that could bury a man in minutes. And he didn't even want her. But her heart didn't care. Her knees weakened. She grasped the back of a chair, whispering a prayer under her breath. "Lord, please. Please protect him." Faith over fear. Minutes felt like hours as Mary paced the main room. The storm worsened, shaking the house as though testing its determination to stand. Oil lamps flickered. Snow crept through gaps in the windowpane. Jonah peered out anxiously, but the world beyond had become a swirling void of white. Mary's chest tightened with each passing moment. "I can't just wait," she finally said, her voice trembling with resolve. Jonah turned sharply. "No." Mary grabbed her shawl and Levi's heavier coat from the peg. "No." Jonah repeated. "Miss Whitaker, you step 1 foot out there and the wind will take you off your feet. You'll never even find the fence line." Mary slipped on her boots with shaking hands. "I know these storms," Jonah insisted. "A man can get turned around 3 feet from his own barn and freeze to death." Mary pulled her scarf tight, tears burning her eyes. "Then pray I don't get turned around," she whispered. "Because Levi is out there alone." Jonah's voice softened, fear and respect tangled within it. "Mary? Levi wouldn't want you risking your life for him." Mary finally looked at him, eyes filled with fierce, trembling faith. "We don't measure love by what a person wants," she said quietly. "We measure it by what God asks us to do." And with that, before Jonah could stop her, she slipped through the door, slammed it shut behind her and plunged into the blizzard. Into the storm. The cold struck like a blow, sharp, brutal, instantly numbing her face and hands. Snow blinded her, clawed at her, tried to shove her backwards. But Mary leaned into the wind, clutching her coat, pushing each foot forward. "Levi," she called, but her voice was swallowed immediately. She stumbled toward the fence line, remembering Levi's habit of riding south when storms threatened. Her eyes watered from the icy sting, her cheeks burning from the cold slashing across them. The wind roared like a wild creature, its teeth made of frozen air. Mary forced herself onward, each breath painful, each step a battle. "Lord, guide me. Please, lead me to him." She followed the fence posts, dark blurs in the white chaos, her fingers gripping the wood when the gusts grew too strong. And then, faintly, she heard it. A whinny. Weak. Panicked. Close. Mary stumbled forward faster, heart hammering. The wind parted for a second, a brief mercy, and she saw a shape slumped beneath a snow-laden branch. Levi. Pinned beneath fallen timber, half buried in snow. Mary cried out, a sob torn from her throat. She dropped to her knees beside him. "Levi. Levi, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, rimmed with frost. His lips were blue. "Mary?" His voice was a hoarse whisper. What are you doing?" "Saving you," she choked out. "Please stay awake." Snow drenched her skirt, bit through the layers of her coat, but she ignored it. She braced herself against the wind and heaved at the fallen branch, straining with all her might. It didn't move. Levi winced. It's no use. Leave me. The storms? Stop, Mary cried fiercely. God didn't bring me here to abandon you. She repositioned herself, dug her boots into the snow, and pushed with everything she had, legs trembling, muscles screaming. The branch rolled just enough for Levi to yank his leg free with a groan of pain. Mary grabbed his arm. Come on. Lean on me. He tried to stand but faltered. Mary slid under his arm, half carrying him as the storm buffeted them relentlessly. Each step back toward the house felt like dragging a mountain. Twice Levi slipped. Once Mary fell, scraping her knee, but she got up before the cold could latch onto her bones. Mary, Levi rasped. You should have left me. She shook her head, jaw clenched against the cold. I would never. The journey home. At last the blurry outline of the ranch house appeared, a glowing smear of yellow in an endless white hell. Mary's legs nearly gave out with relief. When Jonah flung open the door, he let out a strangled cry of shock. Lord have mercy. He rushed forward and helped drag Levi inside. The warmth hit Mary so suddenly she swayed, dizzy. Jonah caught her arms. Mary, are you hurt? She shook her head. Just cold. They lowered Levi onto a blanket near the fire. Jonah shoveled burning logs into the hearth, sending sparks flying. Levi shivered violently, teeth chattering, lips pale. Jonah looked at Mary in disbelief. How did you even find him? Mary knelt beside Levi, brushing melting snow from his hair. I prayed, she whispered. And God answered. Levi's eyes opened slowly, focusing on her face. Something deep and unguarded flickered in them. You came for me, he murmured, voice raw with wonder and pain. Mary's heart clenched. Of course I came. Levi closed his eyes, overcome, with exhaustion, with relief, with something deeper he wasn't ready to admit. Mary wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, her hands trembling with delayed fear. I thought, she swallowed hard. I thought I was going to lose you. Levi's hand found hers beneath the blanket. You won't, he whispered. The storm raged outside, but inside, beneath flickering firelight, something gentler stirred. Not romance yet, but a beginning, a softening, a miracle born in snow and sacrifice. Snow battered the ranch house through the night, rattling the windows like a restless hand. Mary stayed awake beside the hearth, watching Levi's breathing grow steadier, color slowly returning to his face. Every so often he drifted toward wakefulness, his gaze seeking hers as though afraid she'd vanish if he looked away. He didn't say much, not yet. But every glance spoke volumes. Just after midnight the storm shifted. The furious winds softened to steady gusts, and the snow that once screamed now fell in hushed whispers. Mary let out a deep breath, feeling, for the first time in hours, like she could unclench her hands. Jonah sat near the door, exhausted but watchful. Storm's easing, he murmured. We might just get out of this one. Mary nodded faintly. Thank the Lord. But gratitude hadn't fully left her lips when a sharp pounding sounded at the door. 3 frantic knocks. Mary gasped. Jonah sprang up and wrenched the door open. A man stumbled inside, a neighbor from a ranch 2 miles east, his face white with cold and terror. Jonah, Mary please, he cried. It's my wife, Anna, she's in labor and things ain't right. We tried to get to town but the road's gone. She's bleeding, forgive me, she's asking for help, I didn't know where else to go. Mary's blood turned to ice. Jonah froze, panic tightening his features. But Mary moved forward with steady steps. I'll come, she said without hesitation. Is she close? Hours yet, the man choked out. Her pains are sharp and close together, and the blood won't stop. Mary touched his arm. I'll gather what I need. The man's eyes flooded with relief, though fear still trembled in his voice. Bless you. Bless you, ma'am. Jonah looked between Mary and Levi, uncertain. Mary, you can't go back out there. I have to, Mary said softly but firmly. She and her baby will die if I don't. She went to the cupboard, pulling clean cloths and the small roll of instruments her aunt's midwife friend had gifted her before she left Missouri. She grabbed herbs, string, blankets, anything she recognized as essential. Jonah stepped forward, worry in his eyes. It's still dangerous. The hills won't be safe. Mary met his gaze. God brought me all the way to Montana for a reason. I know this in my bones. Her voice trembled, not with fear but conviction. This is the reason. Levi stirred on the blanket by the fire. Mary? His voice was weak but urgent. "Where are you going?" Mary knelt beside him. "A neighbor's wife is in trouble. She's in labor and there's no one else to help." Levi struggled to sit, grimacing in pain. "Mary, no. It's too dangerous. After what you just—" She laid a gentle hand on his shoulder. The warmth of his skin beneath her palm startled her. It felt intimate. "Real. I'll come back," she whispered. "I promise." He caught her wrist, his grip trembling but earnest. His voice cracked with desperate fear. "I can't, Mary, I can't lose you." Mary froze. He realized what he'd said and looked away, breath uneven. But she squeezed his hand. "You won't." She stood, took a lantern, pulled on Levi's coat again, and followed the desperate husband into the quieting night. The storm hadn't ended, but it had softened enough to allow hope. A house on the brink. The neighbor's home was a small cabin tucked against a hill, its single lantern flickering from inside. The wind pushed at the walls, but the structure held. Mary hurried through the door the moment it opened. Anna lay on the bed, her face pale, damp with sweat. Her belly was round and tense, her breath shallow and fast. A dark stain marked the sheets beneath her. Mary's heart clenched. She knelt beside the woman and took her hand. "Anna, my name is Mary. I'm here to help you." Anna tried to speak but winced through another contraction. Her husband hovered helplessly near the door, fists clenched. Mary spoke softly, calmly, her aunt's voice echoing through memory. "Tell me what you've been feeling. How long between pains?" Anna explained with gasping breaths, tears welling in her eyes. "It's not coming right," she whispered. "Something's wrong." Mary touched her forehead gently. "Nothing is wrong, God cannot make right." She set to work with practiced precision, checking the baby's position, assessing the bleeding, preparing the room as best she could. The baby was breech. Mary's pulse quickened, but she did not let fear show. "Anna," she said softly, "your child is trying to come feet first. It's harder but not impossible. I've helped with births like this before." Anna's breath hitched. Will we make it?" Mary took her hand firmly. "By God's grace, you will." Hours of travail. The next hours felt both endless and urgent. Snow tapped the windows like nervous fingers. The wind moaned outside as though mourning with them. The cabin's lantern flickered repeatedly. Mary worked without pause, turning the baby gently, calming Anna through waves of pain, whispering scripture over her to steady her trembling heart. "Fear not, for he is with you," Mary whispered during each contraction. "You are not alone. God is here." Anna sobbed. I can't. Mary leaned close, wiping her brow. "You can. The Lord will give you strength. Just one breath at a time." Her words were steady, but inside, Mary's own fear swelled. The bleeding had worsened, the baby's heartbeat seemed faint. She prayed continually under her breath. "Lord, guide my hands. Lord, save them. Lord, stay with us." Outside, dawn crept slowly over the mountains, casting a pale pink light through the frost-scratched windows. Finally, the baby shifted into position. Mary's breath caught. "It's time," she whispered. "Anna, push now." Anna bore down, screaming through the pain. Mary supported her, leaned back, and caught a tiny slippery body in her hands. A moment of terrifying silence. Then, a cry. Small, strong, miraculous. Anna sobbed with relief, her husband collapsing to his knees, hands covering his face. Mary wrapped the baby boy in warm blankets, tears blurring her own vision. "He's perfect," she whispered. "Strong and perfect." Anna reached for her child, holding him against her chest, her body shaking with joy and exhaustion. But Mary's work wasn't over. She still had to stop the bleeding. "Anna," she said gently, "I'm going to help your body finish the work. Stay awake for me." Mary prayed silently while her hands worked quickly and surely. By God's grace, and a few moments that felt like hours, the bleeding slowed. Then stopped. Relief washed over her like warm sunlight. "They're safe," she whispered to herself. "Thank you, Lord." A return to the ranch. Mary left the family sleeping peacefully as the first true golden rays of light spilled across the snow. She stepped outside, exhausted but overflowing with joy. The storm had moved on. The world was washed clean, glittering beneath the morning sun. Jonah rode out to meet her halfway, shouting in relief and hugging her tightly once she explained what had happened. When she walked back into the Carter Ranch house, the fire crackled warmly, and Levi jerked upright from the blanket on the floor the moment he saw her. "Mary." He tried to stand too fast but winced, grabbing his rib. Mary rushed to him. "I'm all right," she said quickly. Anna and the baby are safe. Levi stared at her, truly stared, as though she were something more than human. An answered prayer. A miracle in flesh and bone. A woman forged in faith and selflessness. Mary, his voice cracked. You saved them. She smiled softly. God did the saving. I was only his hands. Levi reached out and took her hands in his, still cold from the journey, trembling with exhaustion. His grip tightened as though anchoring himself to her. I've never known a woman like you, he whispered. I've never known anyone like you. Mary's breath caught. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch hesitant, reverent. Mary, he said, voice thick with emotion, I don't know what God is doing between us, but I don't want to fight it anymore. Her heart swelled, tears brimming. Then don't, she whispered. Levi drew her into a gentle embrace, careful of her cold limbs, holding her as though she were a precious treasure placed unexpectedly in his hands. And for the first time Mary let herself believe. Maybe she wasn't unwanted. Maybe she hadn't been brought here by accident. Maybe this ranch, and this man, were exactly where God wanted her. Morning dawned with a kind of quiet that felt holy. The storm had passed completely overnight, leaving the Montana world blanketed in pure, untouched snow. The mountains glowed rose gold beneath the winter sun. The ranch buildings, humble and weathered, looked washed clean like a fresh beginning. Mary stood at the frosted window, wrapped in her shawl, her breath forming pale clouds. She watched as Jonah led the horses from the barn, their warm breath rising like smoke into the crystal air. Behind her the fire crackled low. The house for once felt still. Levi was resting though not asleep. Mary could hear the soft, steady cadence of his breathing, no longer labored but thoughtful. Awake. Waiting. And her heart fluttered like a bird ready to take flight. She knew something had shifted last night. Something permanent. After the blizzard birth, after Levi's embrace, after the way he'd looked at her, as though she were the answer he didn't know how to pray for, Mary hadn't been able to sleep. Joy and fear, hope and trembling settled within her like a dance. She touched the wooden window frame gently. Lord, she whispered, your will not mine. Whatever comes, help me trust you. Levi's awakening. The sound of Levi shifting made Mary turn. He was sitting up against the edge of the settee, a blanket pooled around his waist. His hair was tousled, his usually stern features softened in the morning light. When he saw her watching him, a slow, quiet smile touched the corner of his mouth. Morning, he said, voice husky with sleep. Mary felt warmth flood her cheeks. Morning. He studied her in the gentle silence, something tender blooming in his eyes. You came back, he murmured. Like you said you would. Mary swallowed, her voice soft. I keep my promises, Levi. I know. His voice trembled. I know that now. He shifted, wincing slightly but managing to stand. Leaning one hand against the table for balance, he faced her fully. Mary, he said softly, I've been thinking, praying, about everything that happened. Mary's heartbeat quickened. He took a slow step toward her. When I lost Clara, he confessed, voice thick with old grief, I shut my heart up tight. Felt safer that way. Like if I didn't love anything again, then nothing could be taken from me. Mary's eyes filled with compassion. But you, Levi stopped, breath catching. You walked into my life with nothing but faith. Nothing but kindness. You saw every broken part of me and instead of turning away you stayed. He stepped closer. And then you risked your life, twice, without hesitation. Not because you had to. Not because anyone expected you to. But because that's who you are. Mary's breath trembled. Levi. He reached for her hand, his palm warm and slightly rough. I don't deserve what you've brought into my life, he whispered. But I believe, his voice cracked. I believe God sent you here. Not to save the ranch. To save me. Tears welled in Mary's eyes. Levi took a breath, steadying himself with resolve. I don't want you to leave. Not now. Not ever. He swallowed hard. Mary Whitaker, would you be my wife? Truly? Not just in name, not just a contract, but partner, heart, home, everything. Mary pressed a hand over her mouth as tears spilled freely. Yes, she whispered. The word glowed between them like a sunrise. Levi's relief broke across his face like warmth after winter. He cupped her cheek with a tenderness that melted every fear within her. You sure? He whispered, voice shaking. You sure about a stubborn man like me? Mary laughed through her tears. Levi Carter, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. And then, with reverence and trembling joy, he pulled her into his arms. A wedding in the snow. Jonah insisted the wedding happen that day, Christmas Day. Seems fitting, he declared with a grin. New beginnings and all. Word spread quicker than Mary could have imagined. Before noon, neighbors arrived bundled in wool and smiles, carrying hot dishes and warm cider. Anna, pale but glowing with new mother joy, cradled her baby boy and insisted on being there. "Wouldn't miss seeing the woman who saved my life get married," she said softly, squeezing Mary's hand. Inside the Carter home, the room transformed into a small, sacred chapel. Someone draped pine boughs across the mantel. Someone else brought candles. The pastor from the edge of town rode through 3 miles of snow just to perform the ceremony. Mary wore her simple blue dress, mended at the sleeves, her hair loosely braided with a sprig of pine. She caught her reflection in a small mirror and swallowed. She had never felt beautiful before. But today, she felt cherished. Levi stood near the hearth, cleaned up and painfully handsome in his best shirt, his hair combed neatly, his expression a mix of awe and disbelief. When Mary stepped into the room, Jonah nudged Levi, whispering, "Breathe, man." But Levi didn't breathe. Not until Mary reached him. Their hands found each other instinctively. The pastor lifted his Bible, smiling. "A blessed Christmas to you both. Shall we begin?" Vows of redemption. The vows were simple. Holy. Filled with trembling joy. Levi spoke first, voice low but steady. "I promise to love you with the strength God gives me. To honor you, protect you, and stand beside you through every storm. You are God's gift to me, Mary. And I will spend my life thanking Him for you." Mary's tears shimmered in the candlelight. She spoke with a voice that quivered but never broke. "I promise to walk beside you in faith, trusting God with our future. I will cherish you, encourage you, and stand with you in all things. You are the answer to prayers I never had the courage to speak." By the time the pastor announced, "By the authority given to me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," the entire room was silently weeping. "Levi," the pastor said warmly, "you may kiss your bride." Levi cupped Mary's face reverently and kissed her, gentle at first, then with growing certainty, as though sealing a covenant he felt all the way to his soul. The room erupted in joyful applause. Mary leaned into him, trembling with happiness. His wife. She was Levi's wife. Not by arrangement. Not by obligation. By love. God-woven, heaven-blessed love. A promise for forever. As the sun began to set, the guests departed on horse-drawn sleds, lanterns glowing in the gathering dusk. The Carter ranch grew quiet again, peaceful beneath the snowfall. Mary stepped onto the porch, watching golden light spill across the snow. Levi came behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. "Mrs. Carter," he murmured against her ear, his voice full of awe. Mary turned in his embrace, her heart swelling. "Yes, Mr. Carter?" He brushed a thumb across her cheek. "I'm going to spend the rest of my days thanking God for bringing you here." "And I," she whispered, "will spend mine praising Him for giving me you." He kissed her again, slow, deep, full of promise. And beneath the Montana stars, wrapped in warmth and faith, Mary realized something beautiful. She had come to Timber Ridge with nothing. But God had given her everything. A home. A purpose. A family. A future. And a love truer than she had ever dared dream. The Christmas bride had found her forever.